I got this question on Instagram that I wanted to answer here as well. The question is basically, can we have wild-caught chameleons in the same room as we have captive bred chameleons? Assuming that they're in different cages, of course. Now, I'm assuming that you're talking about during the quarantine period. And for those who that's a new word for, quarantine is when we get a new chameleon that comes in and we want to separate that chameleon from the rest of our group because we want to make sure that that new chameleon isn't bringing something in like parasites, fungal infections, or some sort of disease that it could pass on to our other chameleons. I don't personally know of any airborne infectious agent that would go from a wild-caught chameleon to a captive-born chameleon. I don't know that one doesn't exist. I just haven't experienced it, and I haven't heard of one. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just can't share with you that it does. I generally like to have a quarantine period of 60 to 90 days. And during that time, I'm doing parasite checks. I'm looking for diseases. I'm looking for problems. And after that 60 to 90 day window, I want to get 3 negative fecals. And only then am I comfortable having them be in contact with the chameleons that I have already. And also the only time where they would actually have physical contact is if it's in a breeding situation. I don't have playtime. No, don't do playtime with your chameleons. And I do want to say that I do this quarantine process for both wild caught and captive hatch that come into my group. And the reason is that parasites are very tricky little boogers and they have evolved ingenious ways to hitch a ride to find their next host. I mean, think about this. If I shake the hand of somebody that I met, and I haven't seen a chameleon for the entire day, but you know what? I hang out with chameleon people. Well, what if that one person who I shook hands with had just recently held a wild-caught chameleon somewhere else? I, unknowingly, may be taking back something back to my group. That's the way it works, and that's the reason why I do fecal tests on my captive hatched chameleons just as much as I do the wild-caught chameleons. Now, the best way to do this quarantine period is to have your chameleons in separate rooms. I have my captive hatched and my cleared chameleons in one room, and I have a separate room on the other end of my house for the wild-caughts. Now, the astute among you would say, but wait a minute, if there's no infectious agent that goes through the air, wouldn't having them side by side in totally different cages be the same effect? And the answer is technically yes. But what is the number one vector for infectious agents between chameleons within a group? It's these bad boys. Yep, we the keepers. We are the main way that chameleons get infected. And that's because our hands are cleaning cages, they're preparing food, they're messing with the equipment, and we are the common link between every chameleon in our group. And so, although we could technically say that a chameleon could quarantine within the same room as the other chameleons, that is just asking for contamination. It is so much easier to remember your strict cleanliness, hygiene protocols when they're in different rooms. And you take care of the captive hatched chameleons in the morning, and you wash your hands, do other things in your day, and then you take care of the wild-caught chameleons in the evening. So you're separating them in both time and space. If you have them in the same room, it is so easy to forget, overlook, or just say, it doesn't matter. So the bottom line is, the hardest part about quarantine is not necessarily the space, but the person who's administering the quarantine process. This is a tip from the expert who experienced it, so you don't have to. Go ahead and ask any questions you would like about quarantine or the acclimation process or deparasitization, any of that. Ask that in the comments below and we'll discuss it. Bill Strand signing off. See you next time.